What is up, my peeps? Joshua Smith here with another GSD Mode podcast real estate tip. And today I'm here to talk to you about the future of the real estate market. So I'm going to do an extremely deep dive at a very high level today of what's going on with the overall real estate market on a very high macro level, what's going on with the economy, what's going on with the consumer, the two different paths that this economy and the real estate market are going to go. There's going to be two different paths. It's going to go to path A, path B. I'm here to tell you right up front that both paths are going to deliver extreme amounts of pain. Neither path is good, but one of the paths is going to take place. One of them is going to happen. So we need to be best prepared to be in the best possible position to go out there and continue to grow and scale our real estate businesses as real estate agents, team leaders, and brokerage owners. Now, I want to be very clear on this point before I jump in. Look, I'm not creating this podcast as fear porn. I'm not doing this as clickbait to just go out there and get views. I'm not here to try to freak anybody out or scare anybody. I am not a chicken little skies falling kind of guy. Look, there is no reason why your real estate business should not continue to grow year after year, regardless of the economy, regardless of the real estate market. But in order to do that, you got to deal in realities. You can't have your head buried in the sand. You got to pay attention. You got to have the ability to read markets and then pivot, shift, and adapt accordingly. So operating from the mental philosophy that I recommend that you do, and this is how I operate, which has allowed my real estate business to continue to grow and scale for 20 years straight right now and go out there and sell over 7,000 homes and become one of the top agents and team leaders on the planet. My business has just grown for 20 years straight, regardless of booms, busts, worst housing market crash, and it's not because I'm somebody special. It's just because I had a great mentor early on in my career that taught me how to read markets and taught me this philosophy that there is no such thing as a good market or bad market. As real estate professionals, the real estate market's always going to be good for somebody. So no such thing as a good market, no such thing as a bad market. The real estate market is always going to be good for somebody, meaning real estate's always trading hands. So as real estate professionals, it's our job to identify whom the current market is good for and pivot, shift, and adapt accordingly. Now, the vast majority of our industry has a very difficult time doing that. They get accustomed to operating one way and then the market shifts. They're not able to adapt. And I don't want to say it's just, real estate professionals that have a difficult time with that. It's just human beings. Human beings have a very difficult time with change. But you got to be able to read markets, change quickly, adapt quickly, pivot quickly. Because again, no such thing as a good market or a bad market. The market's always good for somebody. It's our job to identify whom the market is good for and shift, pivot, and adapt accordingly. So being able to identify, okay, who's buying, who's selling, why are they buying, why are they selling, where are they coming from, where are they going? And if you do that, again, there's no reason why your business cannot continue to grow. Or I'm also going to break down a little bit of what's going on with NAR and DOJ. And then most importantly, my recommendation of how to prep. So no matter which way all of this plays out, you are in the best possible position to go out there, grow, scale, thrive, not just survive, but continue to thrive and continue to crush it inside your real estate business. All right, so real quick, before we jump in, look, if you are a real estate agent, team leader, and broker owner, and your real estate business is not exactly where you want and need it to be, maybe your business is down here, but your full potential is way up here. You just do not know exactly what you must do to get from where you're at to where you want to go. If that is you, I highly recommend that you schedule a 100% free, 100% zero pressure Zoom coaching call with me personally. It's going to be a 1 hour long Zoom coaching call. And here's what we're going to do on this call. We're going to break down where your business is currently at, what your 12-month goals are, what your long-term goals and visions are for your real estate business, what you are currently doing, what your biggest obstacles are. Then based on that information together, I'm going to map out, hey, if I'm you, if I were in your shoes, here's exactly what I would do to get from where you're at to where you want to go in the quickest, most effective, efficient, profitable manner possible. You have my word on this. This is not some bait and switch, just sales pitch BS. This is a 100% free coaching call. And you have my word on the fact that you will not leave this free Zoom coaching call without knowing exactly what you must do to get from where you're at to where it is that you want to go. Now, full disclosure, I'm going to spend about 50 minutes doing everything that I just discussed. In the last 10 minutes, I'm going to spend a couple minutes walking through what my coaching program entails, what it is. If it's a fit for you, great. If not, that's okay too. We can still be friends, whether you ever move forward with my, paid advanced coaching or not. I promise you, this will be a massively beneficial use of your time. I'm here to deliver. I got your back. I will get you dialed in and make sure that you have extreme clarity on what you must do to, again, get from where you're at to where you want to go. So this is something that you want to take advantage of. Go to www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call. www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call. Okay, so with that being said, I'm going to jump first into what is going on. We're going to kind of blend these with what's going on with the housing market, as well as what's going on with the overall economy, with the overall consumer. Because look, the picture that we're being told, that is being portrayed to us through the media, through the powers that be, is 100% false. So we got to really pay attention and dig into what is going on behind the scenes. As I said earlier, one of the reasons why my business has been able to grow and scale every single year for 20 years straight. And it's not because I'm somebody special. It's not because I'm somebody smart, right? It's, I had an amazing mentor right out of the gate that taught me some amazing things that have served me extremely well. One of those things early on was he taught me how to go out there and read markets at a very high level. So an example with this, in 2008 hits, I had all these real estate agents, in my market. They're like, oh man, I'm having to get out of the market. My business is getting crushed. I had to drop out of the market, go get a job, and the common thing that they'd say to me is, man, nobody saw this coming. I got blindsided by the market. And look, the only way you get blindsided is if you are not paying attention. But if you are paying attention and you know how to read markets, you will not be blindsided. Like I would tell them back then, I'm like, what do you mean you didn't see this coming? How could you not see this coming? At least in my market, we peaked in May of 2004. It was a 31-month slow month-over-month progression. But here's the thing is, if you're not intentionally reading markets and paying attention at a high level, this stuff can sneak up on you. It's kind of like, frogs, how do you boil frogs, right? Put them in a pot when room temperature, you slowly heat up the water so then they don't see it coming, right? So same thing here. So we had 31 months from peak to boom, things falling off of a freaking cliff of slow month-over-month market increases on inventory rates. So it was, slowly taking place. But by reading this and understanding markets, okay, I know that, under 3 months of inventory, and this isn't perfect science, but it's pretty damn close in a model that you can apply to your own business. So under 3 months of inventory is going to be a seller's market, which means that there is more buyer demand than there are listings for sale. So more buyers than sellers, right? So that in supply and demand, anytime that you have more demand than you do supply, okay, prices are going to go up. Now, depending on how low that inventory gets, 3 months of inventory versus 1 month of inventory, different things are going to be going on with pricing. But 3 months or under means that we're in a seller's market. There's more buyer demand than there are sellers. So we know the market's going to, go out there and appreciate. Then about 3.1 months to about 4.9 months is, neutral market, man. That's, almost equilibrium, equal amount of buyers, equal amount of sellers. That's where we see, quote unquote, healthy market when they talk about, real estate historically goes up, let's just say 3% to 4% year over year, because usually real estate outpaces inflation by about 1% or 2% year over year. So that's just, equilibrium, a healthy, good market. In a perfect world, everything would just stay there, but the world's far from perfect, right? Then from there, when we get to 5 months or beyond with inventory, now we transitioned into a buyer's market, meaning there's more sellers than there are buyers for buyer demand. So that means things are going to start softening, and not just softening, but things are going to start coming down. Things are going to start declining. Then, I just learned from being in this for, 20 years and having great mentors that, okay, you start getting in that 6 month of inventory range. Okay, we start to see a big uptick in short sales and distressed properties. Get around 7 to 8 months, you start seeing a big uptick in REO. Now short sales and REO are always taking place and happening, but that's where we start to see, those things accelerate. So if we know that, just like I was able to be positioned with short sales and be positioned with 35 banks and outsourcers and asset management firms before the absolute meltdown of 08 and 09, it's because, okay, like I was watching if your inventory is going up by, let's just say 0.5% per month, okay, you can start to predict, okay, if this trend continues, by this point, is when short sales are going to start really ticking up. This point is when REO is going to really start ticking up. So then at that point, when to start ironing those skill sets, start putting those different plays in place. So you're not skating to where the puck is, you're skating to where it's going. The vast majority of our industry buries their head in the sand. So like when I go talk to people right now of, hey man, the real estate market, there's a good probability the real estate market can go out there and crash. They're like, oh, it's not going to crash, right? People are just, so huge on their convictions, which is a dangerous place to be. Like I'm not here saying it's going to crash. I'm just saying that's one probability. There's another probability that can go another way, which we'll talk about both of those different paths, but I prep and prepare for both. And then I just pay attention. I do not attach, myself to one different, ideology of, whatever it may be. And we've got to look at the full picture and again, be able to go out there and read markets. So let's talk about this. Okay. So you got real estate. I'm going to talk about residential real estate here. that is, what this podcast is really geared towards, helping residential real estate professionals, realtors, team leaders, and brokerage owners go out there and continue to grow and scale their business. Okay, so real estate listing inventory is up 24% year over year. Very important stat to watch. Very important, to pay attention to. Okay, what is the percentage rate of our inventory growing? So when you're not paying attention to this, because this shit happens slow, again, this is where you get blindsided. Okay, so listing inventory now, it was so damn low that people aren't feeling we're not feeling a neutral market yet. We're not, or seeing a neutral market or a buyer's market yet. But the trend is, okay, it's going up and up and up. Now you should be tracking in your market what that acceleration is, so you can start to predict at what point does it become a buyer's market. At what point, if this trend continues, does it become a neutral market versus a buyer's market? But we got inventory on the rise, which is a good thing, right? So we got inventory up 24%. Now we got mortgage demand down 16% year over year. Why do I pay attention to mortgage demand? So these are people going out there and applying for mortgages. This is one of the KPIs. One of the common questions I get here on the podcast, this is why I like to do these updates with you guys so often, is, well, Josh, what date are you paying attention to go out there and read markets? So I'm walking you through what those KPIs are that I pay attention to. So why I like to look at mortgage applications. These are number of buyers that are submitting mortgage applications right now, which again is down 16% year over year. This is a great lead measure, a great KPI that then dictates and shows us what's going to really have, when it comes to transaction volume, what that's going to look like, over the next 3 to 6 months. People getting more, applying for mortgages today are typically buyers between the next 90 days, 3 to 6 months. So then from there, March of 2024, so last month was the worst month for mortgage applications since 1995. Now, I know mortgage rates are back on the rise, at least as of right now today. That 10-year yield keeps going up and up and up because there's just a global sell-off of treasuries. And, this is why, so many people last year were like, oh, man, interest rates 2024, they're going to come down to 5%. I'm like, dude, maybe. But I don't know how anybody can predict that. I don't know how many, with deglobalization at a high level, taking place. I'm not going to get into deglobalization today, but you got to pay attention to what is going on a very macro scale. But when we got deglobalization taking place, when you have population massively contracting on a global scale, that typically is going to translate into a higher cost of capital. But then with what's going on just a geopolitical front, the dollar's getting dumped, man. People aren't there's the demand for U.S. treasuries, at least internationally, is on the massive decline. Right. So what dictates mortgage rates for the real estate industry is people buying treasuries, right? Versus, well, actually what dictates it is mortgage-backed security purchase demand, but the biggest competitor are going to be, your longer term yields. Like pretty much the biggest competitor is usually your 10-year yield, right? The 10-year treasury bond, right? So, okay, why is this going up right now? Right. Okay. Because the treasury, when they like to go out there and print, the $1 trillion every 100 days that they're adding to our overall balance sheet, to overall debt, right? They got to go to raise that capital. They got to go out there and sell treasury bills. They got to go out there and sell T-bills. Right. Well, when there's not a demand for T-bills and people aren't swallowing those up, okay, they got to keep increasing the yield that they offer on those to make them more lucrative so people will buy those. Right. So the people that normally might be buying mortgage-backed securities, as those rates go up and up. So anytime that you see that 10-year yield going up, okay, usually that means that mortgage-backed security purchase demand is going to be, gonna be low. So mortgage rates are gonna start to spike and go up. Right. But even with that being said, we got interest rates down almost 1%, versus where they were a year, at the peak of last year. And then in most markets, about 90% of the country, you got prices coming down slightly. I mean, from the peak, let's just say, coming down from the peak, somewhere between 5-10%, most markets down from the peak, some a little bit more, some less, so I'm just speaking on masses here. Real estate's very hyper local. You got to pay attention to these things for your own specific market. What's taking place in my market here in Phoenix, Arizona might be different than your market. But even with that, so like in my market, okay, I can definitely get a house for a decent amount less than in the peak of 2022. Right? Mortgage or interest rates are less than they were at the peak of last year. So it's more affordable today to go out there and buy a house than it was last year. However, even with that being said, okay, transaction volumes declining, Mortgage purchase applications are declining, and I'll get into why that's taking place. But we're continuing to contract. So there's less and less transactions. So then we got purchase transactions. So actually on the, people acquiring real estate on residential real estate down 8% year over year. So it's contracting. There's lesser homes selling, not more. So let's just kind of recap that. You got listing inventory going up slowly. You got mortgage demand going down. We got purchase transactions going down. So that shows us that, okay, buyer demand's going down and listings, and it's all happening slowly. But when listings are coming up, buyer demand's going down. Yeah, right. Okay, like what is that going to do in our markets, right? So all that is, showing and not just indicating what the fact that it's showing right now is, okay, more inventory is growing, and we got to pay attention to what those rates were, like I explained earlier. Okay, you got 31% of homes in active status right now that had one or more price reductions. So that we're starting to see homes sitting longer. We're starting to see price reductions kick in. You got residential new build inventory nationwide now at 7 months of inventory. So you got new build inventory going up. You got new build pricing down 15% nationwide from the peak in 2022. When we look at mortgage delinquency rates, so this is another thing I'm paying attention to. What's going on with the consumer? Because who's buying real estate? The vast majority of real estate are regular people going out there and buying homes. Yeah, you got investors buying too, but the vast majority of residential real estate that's bought, that's acquired, that's owned is through regular people that are just buying this to go out there and live their lives and so forth. Okay, so when we look at mortgage delinquency rates, they were at 4% in February of 2024. So if we look at, let's break this down per loan product so you guys can have an idea of this. So, okay, right now, currently you got 10.81% of all FHA loans that exist in the United States currently in 30 days or plus default. So they're in default, but they haven't been foreclosed upon yet. So 10.81%, that's only about 3% less than the peak during the great financial crisis, right? And then people are like, well, Josh, if that's true, if it's not that, if that's true, it is true. That is a fact, right? But then from there, they're like, well, why aren't we seeing all the REOs yet? Okay, well, they're doing the powers that be, if you are doing everything they possibly can to artificially prop up this economy, right? So here's an example. Okay, you got Fannie Mae selling off their non-performing assets to private equity firms. So they're not letting these things trickle through the system and hit the market, right? They're doing everything they can to inflate this market, which we'll get into why they're doing that and all of this stuff. And again, that's going to lead into the two different paths that this could go. So 10.81% of all FHA loans currently in default, 4.07% of all VA loans currently in default, 2.61% of conventional loans. So you combine all mortgages, about 84 million mortgages on residential real estate throughout the whole entire United States. You got 3.88% of those currently 30 plus days default on their mortgage. Now, again, these are what's in the pipe that haven't been foreclosed upon yet, but are in default stage. So if you start doing the math on that, you go out there and do the math on that, 84 million times 3.88%, but that's, just under, I'm just trying to, calculate that in my head, but so this won't be 100% accurate, but that's around 3.5, 4 million people somewhere in there. So pre-foreclosures have now, are on the rise and have now surpassed pre-pandemic levels. So these have passed, 2020, before the pandemic, before the shutdown, have passed those levels. But we do have REO, so actual foreclosures, that are down. But why is that taking place? Because HUD, Fannie, Freddie, they are not letting these properties go to foreclosure. Right now, there's different workouts that they're trying to do, and moratoriums going on, and so there's different things behind the scenes, but again, they're packaging up non-performing assets, selling them directly to private equity. So when the powers that be come out to the public, AKA the president and, whomever, right, we want to throw in that bucket. When I say the powers that be, I mean, those that have the power to actually make decisions. So DOJ and, president and you guys go where I'm going there, right? So there's a bazillion of the ABC agencies out there. But when we start looking at this, they're like, oh, well, we're going to go out there and make realtors the target, realtors the enemy, realtors are what's keeping prices so high and so inflated because of their commissions, and they make too much money. This is a scapegoat. They know that is not true, right? The reason why prices are so much is because they went out there and printed almost 50% of every dollar to ever exist since, the infancy of the US dollar has been printed in about the last 4 years. So just think about that, right? So you got about, well, it's not quite 50%, but getting close to that with the amount of printing that they're still continuing to do. But when you got almost half of the money to ever exist since the inception of the United States have been created, in the last 4 years. Okay, all those things are highly, highly inflationary. So the reason why real estate and all these asset class, another way of thinking about this, instead of thinking of this as inflation or whatever, just think of, okay, your dollar is losing your purchase power. So if I used to be able to go buy a house for 500,000, that now costs $1 million. That means my dollar back then, now today is worth 50 cents. So when you 10x the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve, over the last 16 years since 2007, and then you 3.5x the balance sheet of the Treasury Department. So when you're pulling money out of the future, pulling it into the now, that is all things that are going to create massive inflation, and that stuff's not slowing down. So this is going to get worse and worse and worse. But they don't want to admit that we created this problem, the powers that be. They're not going to come out there and say, oh, guys, life is so unaffordable right now. It's the most unaffordable time to be alive as a U.S. citizen, most unaffordable time to go out there and acquire real estate, as a U.S. citizen. People are getting crushed in absolute, the stagflation time that we are in is just crushing people. We understand this is the most difficult time financially to live as a U.S. citizen for anybody alive today. We're sorry about that. We created this damn problem. It's our fault. Right? No, that's not their, right? They're going to point fingers. Oh, it's realtors. Oh, it's these greedy business owners. Oh, it's the greedy grocery store, whatever. No, dude, it was them that created this. And they have at this point, they have zero desire to deploy the actual solution for this. So then from there, okay, like if they wanted to help solving the affordability, okay, they would put a ban or not incentivize private equity to go out there and swallow this up. Because if you look at Fannie, Freddie, and HUD, these are GSEs. They're government entities, government-sponsored entities. So they could go out there and say, hey, look, you need to let these properties foreclose upon, not allow investors to swallow these up, not sell them behind the scenes to investors so these aren't hitting the marketplace. Because look, if we had these properties hitting the market as actual REO, okay, that would start bringing prices down. Yeah, right, making things more affordable again. So, but again, they're intentionally, artificially, creating this super bubble. All right, so then we got pre-foreclosures up now. 55% of the pre-foreclosures that we are seeing today are equity sales. So one of the differences between the pre-foreclosures that we're seeing today, versus historically, especially when people think of pre-foreclosures, they think of great financial crisis and short sales. Okay, the vast majority, 55% of these are equity sales. They got enough money, they got enough equity to go out there and sell the property. But with life going up every single month, with everything else going up, they just can't afford it anymore. So they fall behind on payments. Very easy to go out there and do. Every time you go to the grocery store, every time you go out to eat, with insurance skyrocketing, taxes skyrocketing, people keep, giving this narrative that, or their theory, or, whatever you want to call that of, the housing market's going to crash. Things are locked. People are in such low interest rates. Like they're not going to give up those low interest rates. Look, I'm not saying people want to give them up or they're not doing it by choice, right? But it's going to hit this point where they got to pick and choose, put food on the table, or make my mortgage payment, and they're going to choose food. Okay. So we got all-time record high consumer debt. So we've never seen consumer debt nothing near these levels. We're talking magnitudes of size larger than they've ever been. Then when you look at consumer debt versus savings ratio, never in any point in time in recorded history have we seen the gap this big and also accelerating at this speed. So this tells us that, okay, the average person is in, like, dude, if you're not in the top, they keep saying, oh, the top 10%, dude, even the top 10% are feeling this right now, right? Like if you're not in the top 1%, or 0.5% of the 1%, like you are feeling this, and it's you're going to continue to feel shit's going to get a lot worse before it gets better. All right. So then from there, we got 1.8 million jobs that have been lost in the 5 months. So we just had the worst layoffs in the first quarter of 2024, the worst layoffs that we've seen since 2009. The job numbers are massively, massively falsified. How they calculate them. And what we have going on right now is full-time jobs, plummeting, being laid off. The other thing too to think about is, okay, when they talk about layoffs, they don't count severance. So if you received a severance, if your company needed to lay you off, you got a severance package, that's not included in the data. All they're looking at is total payroll data. So what's going on right now is you have a lot of people, especially from the white collar sector, that's being impacted the heaviest right now. So, okay, they're losing their good white collar, salary jobs, or maybe paying them 150, 200 grand a year. Then from there, in order to make up for that, because there's no jobs left for them to go out there and get, that are like for like. So then they got to go out there and get 3 part-time jobs. The only thing that's growing right now is part-time jobs, primarily in the service sector. But then how they look at that is, okay, well, they had one job that they lost, but then they picked up 3 jobs that still haven't replaced the income of this one job. But that means that there was 2 net jobs out of the economy. Oh, so we're doing so good. Yeah, right. Again, just all bullshit of what's being reported to us. Okay, so already talked about record high gap of debt. Then from there, it's not just consumer debt. You got record high government debt, record high corporate debt, and this isn't just one of the differences between what we're seeing now versus the great financial crisis. The great financial crisis was really a U.S. issue, but when you had the biggest economy on the planet at the time, that then goes through a massive deflationary recession, okay, the rest of the world feels it. Right now, the whole world is fucked, right? Like pretty much everywhere, everybody's experiencing the same thing and is fucked, right? Because after the GFC, and maybe it happened before, but at least this is when it got on my radar. After the GFC, all central banks started colluding, so started working together, and then people will say, "Oh, the central banks will come out." There's like, "Oh, we don't collude. We don't." Okay, then why do you guys all do the same exact shit at the same exact times? Right? Like, they all collude. Right. So we're all experiencing a lot of the same things. Okay, so you got property taxes up 24% between 2019 and 2023. Now, in your market, these might have been significantly more. Now, in 2024, these are skyrocketing much further. So I'm just talking 2019 to 2023. So we got property taxes up 24% in that period of time. Not counting 2024. I know this is the really big year for property taxes, really skyrocketing. You got property insurance up nationally on average 55% between 2019 and 2023. And again, these are much larger figures. I mean, I was just reading about somebody who was on the news and they interviewed him, but a dude here in my market that their property insurance premiums this year in 2024 went up 50% in just one single year. So when people are like, oh, well, all these people are locked in at such low interest rates, but their mortgages are still going up year after year after year after year because of property taxes, because of insurance, and you got HOAs going up in certain cases, any deferred maintenance or maintenance that happens on your property, all that stuff's going up. But then every time you go to the grocery store, every time you go out to eat, everything in life is going up and up and up. And they might tell us, oh, CPI was 3.5% last year. Well, if you believe that, then you must still believe in Santa Claus. So like nobody's life only went up 3.5%. You got to understand that these numbers are so insanely manipulated because it's how they have to adjust to pay out Social Security. And they're already broke as shit. Plus, if they told us the truth, okay, it would set off pure panic. One of the top hedge fund managers alive today, gentleman I follow his content. I don't know him personally, but I follow his content pretty heavily. And I heard an interview with him the other day. His name's Hugh Hendry. And he's like, man, if the average person knew what was actually going on, they would fucking straight up panic. And he's like, and they should be, because, right. But they don't want panic going on. Right. They want us to think everything's good, everything's fine, and so forth. So we don't go out there, freak out and panic. Right. But we should. And I'm not saying to go out there and panic. I'm saying to pay attention, be smart, and operate. And I'll go through the things that I recommend to do, but I want to keep going through this data. Okay. So we got record attendance at food banks globally, or I'm sorry, throughout the US right now, record attendance. So when you look at that, it's like, okay, like what, higher than the Great Depression? You see all the images of the food bank. Right now it's record attendance. Now, some people might be like, well, that's because they're letting 16,000 illegals across the border each and every single day. So you got millions of people across the border right now that don't have places, they don't have food. Maybe, right. Like I'm sure that it definitely contributes to it, but that also contributes to, okay, many more social programs, the money that's being given out, from a government standpoint, that's going to create more inflation. All of this stuff is interconnected, right? So, my recommendation is to not think of what's going on with real estate separate than the rest of the economy, separate than what's going on or what took place during, the COVID lockdowns and all those moves. What's going on at the border, all of this is interconnected, right? It all impacts each other, but the moves are all happening intentionally for different reasons, for very specific reasons. Okay, record number of people going homeless. So in 2023, at a 12% increase in people that went homeless, in 2023, and that's up about 2x of what the annual average is. And then the vast majority that are going homeless are above 55 years old. According to Fortune magazine, not Fortune magazine, this is an article that was published in Fortune. If CPI was calculated the same way that it was back in the 80s, we currently be at 8% year over year inflation, which, I still think that sounds a little bit low, and you can go out there and if you guys budget your own life and just sit there and say, okay, what was our if you're treating your household like you do your business, and you're keeping like almost a P&L on your personal finances, you quickly see that, okay, life is probably more than 8% expensive today, but with ongoing inflation, and if you watch this podcast for a long time, you've been hearing me say this for years now, but plan on, at least 10% inflation year over year for a long time to come. This isn't going to get worse, or this isn't going to get better. This is going to get much worse. So already as we go through, things are, it's like, look at what's going on with the average person. Like what's going on with, everything right now. Well, if it continues to get 10% worse, if life continues to get 10% more expensive just to operate life, just even not even counting real estate, just the rest of life, every single year. Okay, what does that do to the average person? What does that do for people's ability to go out there and acquire real estate? What does that do to people's ability to be able to hold on to the real estate that they're wanting and needing? Everything that I'm seeing here is going to lead to less transaction, like less buyer demand. So that continuing to fall, and then increased inventory, because there's going to be more people in distress, more people that are forced into a situation that they need to go out there and sell. With that. Okay, so you got record number of auto repos taking place, about 25,000 daily auto repos, to the point where they're just not even, like, all these banks aren't even repoing them anymore. And they haven't been actually selling them off at auctions, because the second they do, they have to realize that loss in their balance sheet, and they're scared that alone, banks are scared that what's going on with the auto industry alone will put them into a liquidity crisis. So we got record high delinquencies on auto loans, record high delinquencies on credit cards. And then from there, you got 93% of home buyers that have bought since 2022 that have buyer's remorse. And then since about 2020, around 80%, and there's different surveys that have, different range of percentages there. But why is that something important to kind of pay attention to? Okay, so if people have massive buyer's remorse right now, they regret buying. So that means they don't love the area, they don't love the home, they're having regrets. Okay, how hard are they going to fight to keep their properties when shit hits the fan? And shit already is hitting the fan. There's just a little more shit in the fan. Yeah, right? Like, how long are they going to hang on? How much pain are they willing to endure before they're like, fuck it, I'm out? Yeah, right? All things, I'm not saying it's going to happen. I'm just saying all things that can lead, to adding more inventory. So you got the government adding $1 trillion to the overall debt to the balance sheet every 100 days. So when we look at, all the, continuing added government programs, staff, funding all these different wars, geopolitical, right there. And there's no cut. So when they say that, oh, we're serious about fighting inflation, right? Don't listen to what they say. Watch what they do. Every move they are doing right now is extremely highly inflationary. So again, just my recommend for you is to go out there and plan on your life getting 10% more expensive every single year for probably the next decade or so, until something massively big changes, which we'll talk about that here in just a second. But then from there, okay, now you can start to budget. So if I want to, one of the blessings that we all have as real estate agents, team leaders, and broker owners is we can hedge against this. It's one of the blessings that we have that people in the corporate world can't. If we know that life is going to get 10% more expensive each and every single year, okay, we just got to make sure that our business is growing by 10% on a net revenue standpoint each year, so our quality of life doesn't need to go down. Or you can just, better yet, grow your business by 20%, year over year, of net gain growth. And then now you're outpacing inflation. So like I said at the very beginning of this podcast, just because pain is going to be experienced, just because, the economy is doing something, the housing market's doing something, doesn't mean you need to partake with that in your own real estate business. If you're paying attention, adjusting accordingly. Okay. So with all of this being said, there's two different paths that this can go. Right. And okay, so path number one. Now, this would be if we were still operating in a free market, if we still were a capitalist country operating by, free market capitalist principles, which we are not. We are straight up moved into, socialism, or whatever the hell you want to call this is right now, corporatocracy, fascism, whatever you want to call it. but this is not free market capitalism. Free market capitalism, there'd be no such thing as too big to fail. Recessions are a good thing. Companies going out of business is a good thing, right? Just like forests. Okay, the trees, like if the big trees, if they didn't have natural forest fires, that's healthy for the forest because it, knocks down the big trees, clears that out, so you have the new growth to come up, and go out there and grow. But now, okay, with the bailouts that we experience, and so forth, I mean, it's kind of socialism for the rich, and then I don't even want to call it capitalism for the middle class and poor, and there is no middle class anymore. Right. So the middle class is getting, and this is intentional, right? But the middle class is just getting wiped out. So you're going to have the haves and the have nots. You got to pick and choose which side of the equation that you want to be on. Okay. But so the two different paths that we're going to go, and again, both of these are extremely painful. Path number one is they would get out of the way and let the markets go out there and correct themselves. Right. So that would mean that they'd have to quit adding $1 trillion to the balance sheet. So stop, all your quantitative easing, AKA money printing. They'd have to slash the overall U.S. government by 50%, 75%, maybe 80%. They'd have to slash massive amounts of government programs. They'd have to stop funding all these wars. Right. They'd start, running a fiscal budget, a responsible budget. So they have to massively stop spending, right? Stop all these bailouts, stop all of this stuff. And then what would that do? Everything would extremely fast would freaking crash and self-correct. So the Magnificent Seven, so that would look like probably stock market going down 80%, real estate probably going down 70%, right? That would be massive deflationary period of time. One thing I want you to know is that, okay, since 2007 till today, this has all been artificial. My belief is that they didn't fix the problems that the great financial crisis had created. They just kind of put chewing gum in the cracks of the dam. Now it's poking holes out, or has been poking holes out, and they just keep adding more chewing gum. They didn't fix those true problems. So since then, everything that we've seen with the economy, with how, like, all of this stuff is because of, well, just for simplicity terms, I know it's deeper than this, but just for simplicity terms, it's all because of money printing. It's all because of monetization of debt. Again, Federal Reserve increasing their balance sheet 10x since that period of time. Federal government, increasing at the Treasury Department, their balance sheet, 3.5x, and continuing to scale at levels that, I mean, it's just fucking out of control. Like, go watch the U.S. debt clock. Right? Like, you see, it's just, at a hockey stick, climb that we've just, never seen before. It's fucking crazy. So that's path number one, is to allow. So if it wasn't for all this money printing and monetization of debt, we'd be in like a 17-year-long depression right now. And that's what all the powers that be will do everything to avoid. They'll do everything that they can to avoid deflation. So, and that's what they're doing right now. So they're not going to, now I'm not saying it still can't happen. I don't know how much the powers that be can fully control. There's things I'm sure that are out of their control. So that's one path: a massive deflationary depression, whether you want to call it a recession or depression. But we need a massive deflationary depression if we want to fix the problems that are taking place right now. Now, that's going to create a lot of pain. Think about, okay, people, 80% of retirement's gone. They probably have to just, well, guys, we fucked up with Social Security. This is a program that we can't have anymore. So everybody's Social Security is just done, gone. We're talking massive slashes, which, people won't allow to happen. I mean, the reason why the powers that be don't do this is because that won't be popular amongst the voters. Voters won't vote for that, but unfortunately, just is how life works. Everybody makes decisions for the now. Everybody wants to eat the donut because it tastes so good right now, even though it's probably going to give them atherosclerosis and fucking diabetes and, wreck them in the future. So, all these, so people care. People are selfish. And everybody's going to always act in their own best self-interest. They might say, oh, what about my kids? What about my grandkids? They don't give a fuck about their kids or their grandkids. Otherwise, they'd be, operating in a much different way. Right. So with that, so pain, massive pain. Right now, what that would do is that would bring back purchasing power of the dollar. So like I said earlier, don't think of this as, it's not that, oh man, my house went down, from $1 million to 500,000. My house went down 50% equity. That's one way to look at it. But the other way to think about this is, okay, you gain back 50% more purchase power of your actual dollar. Do you want your dollar to be worth more or worth less? It's not that stock market and real estate are just performing so amazing. It's that our money supply is being so diluted. Your purchase power is going to nothing, right? That is what is taking place right now. If you break it back since what's the inception of the Federal Reserve back in the early 1900s, the dollar's lost over 90% of its purchasing power. It's kind of back like in the Roman eras where they, you got the gold coin and the government started, let's just add a little bit of copper. Let's add a little bit more copper, a little bit more. And they kept adding more and more until boom, it's absolutely worthless. Okay, so that would be path number one. That's the path, just full disclosure, that I hope it goes, right? Because otherwise the other paths is much scarier, much more worse, when it comes out for other reasons, right? Okay, so that would be path number one. That would just mean, okay, like our kids and our grandkids could go out there and still partake in the American dream. Because if path number two happens, even though as painful as path number one is, if path number two happens, okay, America's, we know it's done. Constitutions, we know it's done. The American dream, as we know it's done. Now, path number two is the higher likelihood, higher probability. At least with the moves that they're making right now, this is what the powers that be are pushing for and wanting. Where, okay, all of this inflation just continues, right? They can inflate their way out of debt, right? That's one strategy there when it comes to that. But here's the thing so they keep inflating themselves out of debt and keep, doing what they're doing right now, right? It's easier on the voter base. It's less, painful in the moment for people, but the pain after the fact, just like, okay, if I sit there and slam donuts for every meal right now, yeah, it might taste better in the moment than chicken breast and broccoli. But at some point, it's going to create much more pain in my life, right? So at some point, if you just study history, this is going to end in a debt jubilee. You get to the point where that debt is an impossibility to be paid back, which we might already be there, not just on a national level, but global level, so you get to a debt jubilee where they're going to have the US dollar goes away. They're going to have to reset and then replace that with something different, which is more than likely going to be a central bank digital programmable currency. And you can go do your own due diligence research on that, but that will be a freaking nightmare. That's going to be, a prison for all of us, but those are the paths, right? They're going to keep doing what they're doing right now where the dollar becomes worthless. And there's been 500 fiat currencies in recorded history prior to the US dollar. They've all suffered the same fate. The powers that be can't control the printing press, and then eventually, boom, it goes away. Debt jubilee has to come in, which just essentially means, okay, the dollars no longer exist. We're going to replace it with something else. And then just reset the system, right? When it comes to that. Now, through that and on the path to that might sound nice if you want a central bank programmable digital currency, which means, okay, if your carbon footprint is higher than it's supposed to be, okay, maybe you get shut down. Right? If you don't vote a certain way, it's a central bank digital programmable currency. Right? So just like the truckers up in Canada that were out there protesting, accounts get shut down. Now it's going to be much easier, right? Every privacy will be gone out the window 100%. And if you aren't a good boy and girl, right, then boom, there's going to be negative consequences, when it comes to that. So a lot of negatives there, but okay, just understand too, as inflation continues with what we're seeing right now, when the gap between the haves and the have-nots, when you have massive inequality like this is where you typically start to see shit like civil wars. I'm not saying that's going to happen. I hope to God it doesn't happen. I don't want to see, people fighting against people because now we're fighting each other. We're not fighting the true enemy, right? But it's typically what happens. You get to a point, okay, when people can't go out there and eat, when people are hungry, when they are desperate, crime will explode, which is already exploding. I mean, most crime is going up, 20-30% year over year right now. Kind of interesting that the FBI stopped, calculating crime stats and making that public data a couple of years ago when all this started getting ramped up. And that could just be coincidence. I don't know. I'm not here trying to, say it's using that as conspiracy theory, but, timing is interesting. But crime going massively up. Internal wars going up, right? And then obviously global wars, like what's going on globally with wars, because a lot of governments, I was talking with, had to do it in the podcast a long time ago, or not too long ago, but, several years ago, who's now a billionaire. And he's like, look, man, government will probably try to take us to war. That's what governments historically do when debt gets too far to control, because it gives them endless excuse to go out there and print money and do shady shit behind the scenes, right? Of whatever that may be. But his belief was like, dude, no war's going to get us out of this, right? Like there's, something else is going to take place here. But those are the two paths. It's going to be, one or the other. Maybe there's a middle ground. I don't know, but it's going to be one or the other. Now, for me, again, I prefer all of this to crash massively. Because that's a lesser of two pains, in my opinion. And I'm not telling you what to think. You can go out there and make up your own, decision on that. Okay, so we got all that going on. Now let's quickly talk about NAR DOJ, and then I'll jump into just to end this off with what I recommend that you do right now to be prepping for this. I know this podcast is going long, but wanted to do a deep dive into this, for you guys. All right, so then with the NAR DOJ changes, I created a podcast on this yesterday. I apologize for me watching that. I didn't catch it till after the fact, but I had a microphone my microphone went out. And it had like annoying beeping, almost like an alert beeping sound in the background. So I had to go get a new mic. But I wanted to release it because I thought it was really important. But I'll just recap that, really quickly. So what's going on? April 5th, the DOJ reopens up their investigation into NAR for their antitrust lawsuit. So we all know what's going on with the NAR settlement. I'm not going to go into that. You all guys know what's going on with the NAR settlement proposal, but the DOJ does not like this. This is not true commission decoupling. So the DOJ is coming out and cracking down on this. We'll see what takes place. But my guess is that the DOJ is, the probability is high enough that they're going to get their way, which means, okay, how the NAR lawsuit settlement right now, the 4 points of this, okay, required by, I'll do this very quickly because I know this is not new news to you guys, but required buyer broker agreements before you can actually physically open up a door, show a property. Change number 2 is within that buyer broker agreement, you must have your buyer agent representation fee disclosed, agreed upon, negotiated, signed on the dotted line before you can ever show a single property, open up a single door. That's change number 2. Change number 3 is the commission, quote unquote, co-broke field in the MLS going away. So as agents that represent buyers, we can no longer see if the seller's offering, some element of concessions to be applied to buyers, rep fee, that like, we're going to have to figure out, quote unquote, workarounds for that. And workarounds just might be, at least how the NAR settlement right now is, okay, you might have them post on their website or, just having to call every single listing agent to see what that is, if that's something necessary for a clientele. But then from there, change number 4, which is the biggest and most significant, is, how compensation is paid out. Right. So now this is how NAR wants this. This is their settlement that's, submitted for court approval right now, but this is what the DOJ doesn't like. So right now, I'm telling you guys this right now, if the NAR settlement gets passed, it goes through, and all is good to go there. That is best case scenario of where we're at right now. Worst case scenario is if the DOJ gets their way. So best case scenario that we have right now is the NAR settlement proposal, right? So that's going to be best. So you got seller paying listing agent. And then historically, it's been seller paying listing agent, and then listing agent. If you had to be, where an agent brought a buyer, okay, then listing agent would split a percentage of their commission with you. So seller never even paid the commission, right, to the buyer's agent. This is all just bullshit. The DOJ has been weaponized against the American people 100%. This isn't to punish us so much, but to punish the consumer and make it harder and harder for people to go out there and acquire real estate, make home ownership unaffordable because renters are easily controllable, especially with CBDCs, which again is a plan that, that's with all the inner workings of everything that we're seeing, put the pieces together. Like I said, path number 2 is probably the highest probability here. At least that's what they want the most. Because then, we're just all slaves of the system. If we're not already, but we're just that much more slaves of the system. Right. So then from there, okay. So, typically I go and take a listing, maybe I'm charging X percent. Then from there, if I bring a buyer, I'm still charging X percent. But if a buyer's agent brings a buyer, we got agreed upon terms and, whatever, for them doing 50% of the work plus bringing the buyer, okay, I'm splitting my commission with them. So the buyer's agent was always paid for through the listing agent, never the seller, through the listing agent. Right. But, we're evil and whatever. So then with that, okay, that has now changed, right? With the NAR lawsuit settlement proposal, at least, right? So, okay, now you got seller paying for their representation, buyer paying for their representation. Now the workaround, and this is what the DOJ doesn't like, is that, okay, seller can offer buyer concessions. And then within those concessions, those can be applied towards buyer agent rep fee. So just for example's sakes, charge whatever you want to charge. We're not allowed to discuss commissions, but just so for example's sakes, right. Let's just say you chose to go out there and charge, your client, it's for a buyer rep fee, 3%. Right. But then your buyer needed 3% closing costs, to cover their closing costs. So then, okay, if you were able to go out there and negotiate for the seller to offer a 6% concession, 3% of those could be applied to, buyer's closing costs, 3% of those could be applied toward buyer agent rep fee. This is what the DOJ doesn't like. The DOJ wants true commission decoupling, meaning you got listing agent responsible seller responsible for listing agent, buyer responsible for buyer's agent. No way, shape, form, or fashion can each other compensate the other. So then from there, okay, what's that going to do? Okay, that's going to massively disrupt people's ability to go out there and acquire real estate. And just so you know, I mean, the government, Biden signed an executive order in 2021 that's in alignment with the UN 2030 agenda, which I think all of you should go out there and do your research on UN 2030 agenda, because this is all moving forward. It's what the powers that be want, and our country and our government officials are all on board with that, whether in the right, left, where your political affiliation is. That's just a smokescreen, just a distraction. Yeah, right. It's just all straight up uniparty right now. They just try to divide you with wedge issues to get you focused on the other shit, the wrong shit. So with this, and look, there's good people in both parties, right? So, enough being said on that. It's time for another podcast, but with that, okay, part of UN 2030 agenda is for governments to own 30% of all land, water, private property, by 2030. So they got to go out there and acquire a shit ton of property, right? So if you want to get it to a point now, we operate in a corporatocracy right now. So there's no way of knowing where government and big business, private equity, right? Like they're like, there's no way of telling, where one begins and where it ends now, so there's back doors of acquiring this real estate, to go out there, but what they're doing right now is a perfect move, perfect position for the government and, private equity firms and large institutions that are in business with the government to go out there and acquire a shit ton of real estate, making it very difficult for people to hold on to that real estate, and maintain their real estate. So, they making it where home ownership is not something that's, doable for the average person. They can't acquire it. They can't hold on to it, making it very difficult for small mom and pop investors, so if that takes place, the DOJ gets the way that they want. Yeah, it's going to make some massive, massive disruptions, so you got to be prepared for that. Right. And you can go check out the video that I, created yesterday, the podcast I created yesterday on that. Okay. So what can we do? And I'll wrap this up quick here, because I know we're going long here, but I always want to have a positive spin on this. So with this, I know I covered, a lot of things, and it's easy to get down with this stuff, but look, don't allow it to get you down. Like we can't control shit, right? Like change is always happening, always is, always has, always will be, just is what it is. Yeah. Right. Now, I'm not saying that you can't go out there and vote and do different things to have some influence possibly on the way things that you want to sit, vote with your checkbook, vote with your vote. I'm not making this a political thing. I'm just saying, I'm not saying that you have zero power. But where you have the most power is to control what you can control. So if all this shit goes on, right? Okay, it doesn't mean that your real estate business needs to be hindered. But if you don't dial in these things right now, your business is going to get crushed, right? So number one, treat your business as a business. You can no longer wing it. So they're going forward. It's already, this way today. Anybody that's winging it right now is massively struggling, or their business is not growing, staying stagnant or declining. So you can't wing it. You got to treat your business as a business, meaning you're obsessing over strategy, you're obsessing over your processes and systems, you're tracking your business, and then plugging in the right people at the right times to go out there and continue to grow and scale. How do I know if somebody's winging it? So you can just kind of do a quick audit in your business. Okay, you are winging it if, number one, you're not tracking your data inside your business properly. Number two, if you ever show up to the office, you're like, what am I going to do today? I'm here. I'm ready to start working hard. What am I going to do today? If you ever ask yourself that question, okay, you're winging it. You're operating as an amateur. Like if you treat your business as a business, you know what you must do to win each and every single day. So here's exactly what I must accomplish today to be on target, to be on track, to go out there and win. So you got to treat your business as a business. Otherwise, you're going to get ripped apart. Number two, I highly encourage you all master listing client acquisition. Don't wait. I'm not saying to abandon. I had this question this morning actually on my YouTube channel. Somebody's like, well, with all the stuff that's going on right now, should I drop my buy side of the business and only focus on the list side? I'm like, no, right? Because it sounded like they're having success with YouTube and so I'm like, continue doing everything that you're doing right now that's working. But then in addition to that, then add on and get damn good at the listing acquisition side. So example, it's one of my top agents on my real estate team. She absolutely murders it and crushes it with YouTube and social organic and inbound, buyer reloads. And she has months where she's about, 8 deals just from buyer reload business coming in. So like I told her over a year ago, as we started prepping and hedging for this, like we've had a lot of time to prepare for this. So hopefully you guys have been really prepared for this, right? If you're not, it's not too late to be prepared, but you got to act fast. So then from there, like I told her over a year ago, I'm like, look, keep doing all the things that you're doing. That's crushing for you. Keep doing all those things. But in addition to those, let's add at least one listing niche to your strategy, to your arsenal. Give me 30 minutes a day, Monday through Friday, so we can stack you at least one listing a month. So you have this skill set down. You have this, like, you know what to go out there and do just in case the buy side gets disrupted. Then boom, you can scale this up and you know how to do it. And you have that, you're not having to start from scratch and having to go through a freak out moment. So highly, the DOJ wants to get their way. Buyer agency will be disrupted probably by 90%. Yeah, right. And maybe not that severe, but that's what I prep and plan for just in case. Hope for the best, plan for the worst. Okay, number 3, you got to play strategic offense. So by strategic, I mean identifying who has the highest probability of needing your services in this market. If you're working hard, if you're reaching out to a lot of leads and doing a lot of lead gen follow-up, and you're like, oh, I'm having all these conversations, but nobody's motivated. Okay, you got the wrong strategy. Right? You got to go after people that need to buy and sell versus those that want. There are a bunch of people that want to buy and sell right now, but they're unwilling or unable to. You got to identify those with a need, who's in a life situation change, right? So example, like people going through divorces, people, pre-foreclosures, absentee owners, right? So, reload buyers, right? So niching down. So strategy is who has the highest probability to need my services. Offense is, what can I do that I'm in full control over each and every day in my business to put deals together? I ain't waiting for shit to come to me. I'm not saying I'm abandoning, past client repeat referral business. I'm still doing those things. But my primary strategies are things that are 100% in my control today. Right? Where, hey, if I do XYZ activities, guaranteed to get, ABC number of business, right? Like I know, okay, if I do 500 dials, 50 conversations, right? That is going to equate to one listing taken with the niches that I'm targeting and focusing on right now. Okay. So if I want to go out there and list 2 listings, 2 listings a week, okay, then I know I got to do, 200 dials and have 20 conversations per day, Monday through Friday. Right. Not difficult to go out there and do. Okay. So, the next one here is make sure that you are running lean. So every dollar in your business is accounted for. Dollars going in, dollars coming out. I'm not saying to cut everything. Like if it's making you ROI, like look, you need marketing, you need sales, you need good people, you need good systems, you need good information, good coaching, like things that are growing your business. Okay, keep investing in those. I'm just saying, like anything that's wasted money, maybe you have systems that you're not using, shit that you're not using, things that you're not getting an ROI on. I wouldn't go out there and sign like long-term lease spaces, right? Like you want to be like a speedboat where you can scale up or scale fast really quickly. And then the last element is work hard. Like work your ass off. Right now is a time where we're all going to have to work hard, work smart. Like don't be seeking balance in this market. Again, this shit's going to get ugly. You have the decision right now to be in the haves or the have-nots. Are you somebody that just needs to survive, or are you somebody that needs to go out there and succeed? You got to make a decision on which type of person you are. There's only 2 types of people out there: those that need to survive, those that need to succeed. Are you the type that needs to succeed? Do you want to go out there and leave any element of legacy in, for your family, or do you just, want to go out there and collect food stamps? And I know that might sound extreme, but that's where we're headed. Right. So go out there, just work your ass off, do what it takes, but you got to work hard and you got to work smart in combination with the two. All right. So then from there, like I said earlier, you guys, if you do not know exactly what you need to do inside your real estate business to get from where you're at to where you want to go, and you want to take advantage of that 1-hour free Zoom coaching call with me personally, we can break down where your business is at, what your 12-month goals are, what your long-term goals and visions are, what you're currently doing, what your biggest obstacles are. If you want me to come up with and deliver a strategy for you on this free coach call, like you will leave. I'll be like, okay, like you'll know who you got to be targeting, how you need to be reaching out to them, how many calls. Like, I'll let you'll by the end of that call, you will know what you got to do to go out there and win each and every day and each and every single week. And it doesn't matter if you're individual agent, team leader, broker owner, I got you covered. I got your back. I will get you dialed in. So if you want for free to take advantage of the most powerful hour that you'll ever invest ever in your whole entire real estate business, go to www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call. www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call. Now, if you don't take advantage of this, I can't help you, right? So if you're, want to be naive, if you're like, look, some of you might watch this, oh, I'm good to go. My business is crushing, killing. I'm growing 50% year over year. That's not you. Yeah, right. You better be booking one of these Zoom calls, dude. I'm not here. It's not a bait and switch. I will not let you down. I will get you dialed in. You have my word on that. I will make sure that we get you rocking and rolling, all for free. I don't know what else to do, right? Other than to offer free help, free coaching for those that want it, need it. Blows my mind though that, how many people watching, listening to this that don't take advantage of it, that I could easily go out there and help and turn around their business like that for free. Zero pressure. I'm not, like I said, I'm not here to, whatever people think in their head that this is going to be. No, this is a free coaching call. I'm going to get you dialed in. You have my word on that. All right. So if you want to take advantage of that, www.gsdmode.com/Zoom call. All right, guys. Hope this is helpful. Keep crushing. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.